Find it. If I can find it. Oh, we are live. Hello, Facebook. Stephanie with TNJ4 here. We are in the car outside of City Hall just because it's raining. But I'm here to talk about the Supreme Court decision, the state Supreme Court decision, officially ruling that ballot drop boxes are illegal. This ruling came down today, and I'm just going to kind of go over the quick history, not long. The ballot drop boxes began in 2020, and it was the height of the pandemic, and there was just concerns about the volume of absentee ballots of people who wanted to mail them in instead of go to a big gathering in person. And whether those ballots would make it in time, and then just this option of ballot boxes being able to get to drop off your ballot for the elections. If you can think back to the imagery of the spring 2020 election in April, remember when the city of Milwaukee had reduced its voting sites to 5, and the lines were wrapped around the block because people were social distancing, and people were worried that, if they had ordered an absentee ballot, that it wouldn't get there in time. So think of those images. So that was the reason the ballot box was implemented. The Wisconsin Election Commission implemented the ballot box. And there's Lauren, say hi. And so those drop boxes were available for several elections over the past few years. And in Milwaukee, there were 15 sites, and it was, mostly at libraries. There was one at City Hall. I was just at Tippecanoe for my live shot at noon. There was a ballot box there, but it's been since covered up because a group voters sued over the legality of the ballot drop box, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and this is their ruling. Let's see how many pages. This is, I think, close to 100-page ruling, just sort of all the justices' opinions and the conclusions, and just a lot of good information in here of court cases and such, of what they and a lot of Wisconsin state statute that the judges looked into regarding this case. But as you recall, back in our spring elections of this year, there was a lot of back and forth of, are the ballot drop boxes available? Are they not? Are they available? Are they not? So they were legal for the February 14th primary election, and then they had to get closed up on February 15th because they were not available for the spring election that was back in April. So now that was a temporary blockage. Now they are completely ruled illegal. And the reason the state Supreme Court writes is buried in my highlights. And their conclusion, I'm old school, I printed out in highlight. They say only the legislature may permit absentee voting via ballot drop boxes. WEC, the Wisconsin Election Commission, cannot. Ballot drop boxes appear nowhere in the detailed statutory system for absentee voting. WEC's authorization of ballot drop boxes was unlawful, and we therefore affirm the Circuit Court's declarations and permanent injunction of the WEC's erroneous interpretations of the law, except to the extent its remedies required absentee voters to personally mail their ballots, an issue we do not decide on at this time, and we decline to decide at this time whether the memos are also invalid as unpromulgated administrative rules. So it's basically what you're saying is this needs to be codified into state law if you want to be able to make a ballot box legal. April Rose Gross says, is it now required we show for voting, or are we still able to do absentee votes, just not drop off boxes? Yes, let me make that very clear. Absentee voting is still allowed. It's just you either have to mail it in via the post office, or drop it off at the clerk's office, which would be at your city hall or, wherever your municipal election office is. So you can still mail it in. That's totally fine. That's been the rule for a very long time now. Or you could drop it off at the clerk's office, but a ballot box at your local library or at a grocery store or at a community center, that is just not ever going to be available anymore, unless the legislature codifies it into law. And so, a lot of people used these ballot boxes. At least in Milwaukee, our reporting shows that for the 2020 election, more than half of the absentee voters in the city used these ballot drop boxes. And they were all over. They were at the library. You would see them. You'd see they're like little mailboxes. They had like red and white on them. And they'd be in places where, they had surveillance, and they would be locked up to make sure that stuff, you can put anything in and out besides your ballot, and that your ballot was there. And then also, if you wanted to track your ballot, you could go to myvotewisconsin.org and just see if it made it to the clerk's office and was received. And then another important thing about Wisconsin is we can't start counting absentee votes until election day. So those votes wouldn't be counted in advance. They were just held. The boxes would be emptied. I was at Central Count for the February 15th primary election, and basically, the last remaining votes that were dropped into the drop boxes, workers would go pick them up and bring them to Central Count. Will the municipalities have a drop off, or must you drop off during office hours and be in person? This is slightly unclear. So it sounds as if municipalities might be able to have a box for your ballot. And it's unclear if it'll be, during office hours or so, or if you could just leave it at the office, like even slide it under the door, or leave it in their mailbox. That kind of remains to be seen. And then in person, that's another issue that is a great segue, because the Supreme Court in their conclusion said that they are not going to decide on who needs to either mail the ballot or drop it off. And so that is a critical question, because for people who may be living with disabilities, or are homebound, or rely on caretakers or their spouse for very, things such as even just writing or getting around, they're saying that they're not going to rule on whether or not, your husband or your caretaker could mail or drop off the ballot themselves. That is something that they are still deciding. However, it sounds like in the opinion that whatever accommodations federal law requires, WisStats seems to permit them. The elector may receive assistance under sub 5. We address the argument no further. So it sounds like they realize that under federal laws that protect people who live with disabilities, that if you need help voting, all of those federal protections still apply. It says, and then this is Wisconsin State Statute 6.875. It says, if the absent elector declares that he or she is unable to read, has difficulty in reading, writing, or understanding English, or due to disability is unable to mark his or her ballot, the elector may select any individual except the elector's employer, or an agent of that employer, or an officer or agent of a labor organization which represents the elector, to assist in marking their ballot, and the assistant shall then sign his or her name to a certification on the back of the ballot as provided under sub 5.55. Okay. And so even still, like if you look at your absentee ballot, if you've ever gotten an absentee ballot, it gives you the option, like, are you, like, there's a signature there, like, are you an elector helping somebody vote in this case who is unable to mark it or deliver it or mail it in this case? There's an option on that ballot for whoever is helping you to sign it, just for the record purposes. Okay, so then here's a couple of other interesting pieces in the majority opinion. Administrator Wolf, she is the Wisconsin election administrator. She is aware of 528 ballot drop boxes utilized for the fall 2020 election statewide. By the spring 2021 election, Administrator Wolf says municipal clerks and local election officials reported 570 drop boxes spanning 66 of Wisconsin's 72 counties. So those are a lot of boxes, and they were people were using them, and so that is no longer. You might even be able to see them at your library now. They have been covered up or removed. And then a couple of more of my highlights in here that I can show you that I wanted to point out. I feel like a law student. So, I don't want to be more confusing, but it says the WISStat 6.855 identifies the sites at which in-person absentee voting may be accomplished, either the office of the municipal clerk or an alternate site, but not both. An alternate site serves as a replacement for the office of the municipal clerk rather than an additional site for absentee voting. WISStat 6.874B1 requires the elector to mail the absentee ballot or deliver it in person to the municipal clerk, which is defined to include authorized representative. And in-person absentee voting is also called early voting, which we have here in Wisconsin. In early voting, you go in to your polling site and vote. So that is technically in-person absentee. That's not changing. That's at your municipal clerk's office or where that polling place has been designated. The other thing too is let me see here, the in-person. Lost my train of thought of what that was all about, no, that wasn't it. But anyway, so this was something that we were kind of expecting the Supreme Court to rule on. It was, if you recall back in the spring, there was a lot of back and forth. And it basically says, we conclude WE staff erred by authorizing a voting mechanism not authorized by law. The memos created a ballot drop box scheme entirely absent from Wisconsin's election code. So again, they're trying to say in this ruling that the ballot boxes are not codified in state law, and therefore it's not lawful. They are illegal. They cannot be used unless it is codified into state law, which would be the role of the state legislature. WEC staff also erred in the memo by one stating a family member or another person may return the ballot on behalf of the voter, i.e. an agent of the voter may place the voter's absentee ballot in a drop box. The law does not permit this. So that was like another thing too, is people were saying, okay, can you go drop off your ballot? That they said that the law doesn't permit this. However, if you need assistance voting, those are protected. Your right to vote is protected under federal just federal law. That applies. So any protections you might have if you face a barrier in terms of accessibility to voting, those are still protected. It's just that these ballot boxes will not exist anymore, and you'll have to bring them to, if you want to hand them in yourself, you have to bring it to your municipal clerk's office or mail them in or go vote in person. So that's it. And if you have any more questions, just leave them here and we'll try to answer them. Thanks so much.